We all struggle with different sins, and in today's video I want to show you how to overcome your habitual sins. Recently I was praying and reading the Bible, right? And I believe God showed me something which is really paramount if you really want to overcome the habitual sins you're actually dealing with, right? And before I basically get into what God basically showed me, I want to just show you a quick piece of text from the Bible because it showcases what I'm going to explain just in a very nice format. As you can see here, look, this is from the book of James in the New Testament, and it says, every man is tempted when he is drawn away of his own lust and enticed. We are basically tempted, right? We're all tempted in different ways, and then we are basically drawn away. Our carnal nature is enticed and we fall into lust. We want to do those bad things, right? And then he says, then when lust hath conceived, it bringeth forth sin, and sin, when it is finished, bringeth forth death. So there's that process that I wanted to highlight and show you before I got into what God showed me the other day when I was basically praying and reading the Bible. So what God basically showed me was, he showed me a seed being planted in the ground. Imagine if you planted a seed in the ground, right? In your garden or in an open field, wherever it was. You've got some seeds and you basically put them in the ground and you went about your business. How easy is it for you to pull that seed out of the ground, right? You could literally, it hasn't sprouted it yet, it hasn't done anything. You could just literally go over to the soil and just basically grab out the seeds, right? The reason I bring this up first and foremost, now imagine you plant some seeds in the ground, right? And you let it blossom for a little bit. And you come back in a day or two or in a couple of weeks. And those seeds have started to populate. There's now little roots actually coming out of the ground. And then you go over and you basically now pull it out. I remember in my younger years, that was one thing I used to do, and it was very fun. I used to like basically pulling out newly planted seeds which had roots. And the reason I liked doing this is because it was a way for me to see how strong I was. Because if you could pull it out, it's like there's roots in the ground, right, that have basically been forming. But if you couldn't pull it out, it means those roots are now more firm and strong, right? And this is where I want to get to, because the last thing God showed me was this. Imagine you plant some seeds, right? And you wait weeks, months, years, decades, and then you come back. And what do? You try to rip it up. What's going to happen? Right? Now you've got a fully blossomed tree. But notice what we did in all three scenarios. In all three scenarios, this is what many of us do when it comes to overcoming our habitual sin. We treat it like it's just an everyday normal sin. We go over to the ground and we just try and pull the seeds out. Yeah, let's just pull the seeds out. You see, in the first two examples, you could use your own strength and just pull out the seeds, right? Or pull out an additional piece of rooting, which was coming a couple of days or a week or two later. But weeks and months and years and decades later, you can try and walk over to that same piece of soil. And this is not going to work because now you have a full blossom tree with deep roots. Obviously the trunk, you've got the whole body, and you've got branches with leaves on it, right? So think about this. When we go to the tree, we should no longer be now trying to do this and try and reach and pull out seeds. Why? Because it's not going to work. Realistically, what we should be doing when we come to the tree is we should be chopping and just hitting it all different ways, trying to pull the tree down. But one thing you'll notice is this. It wasn't with the first example with the seeds. It wasn't with the second example with the mini roots. It was when the tree had fully blossomed where we now realize that, you know what, we can't take this tree down. But we made the same mistake in all three examples. What was the mistake we made? And this is the solution. I'll tell you now in a moment, how to overcome habitual sin. The mistake we made was thinking that we can overcome this habitual sin by ourselves. Why? Because in the two examples, what can we do? We can walk over in our own strength, in our own power, and pull those seeds or pull those roots out of the ground. But it's only when we get to this big, great tree that we now physically realize and have to acknowledge that we cannot do it ourselves. Some people will still keep chopping and clawing and trying to chop at that tree, but it's never going to come down. What we need is the Holy Spirit, and we need to feed the Holy Spirit. And that is one of the reasons and one of the things you learn in the book I wrote called Walk in the Spirit. We're not going to be trusting, and Christ never said, trust in your own strength. You can trust in your own strength deceptively in phase 1 and phase 2 when you're ripping seeds and the roots, little roots out of the ground. But it becomes also clear for us as Christians when it gets to this big fully formed tree that we can't do it ourselves. We could never do it ourselves in the first place, but in the first 2 phases, we were just acting as if we could. If you want to overcome your habitual sin, you need to allow the Holy Spirit to come into your life and fully blossom and remove those seeds, pull out those roots and chop down that humongous tree. That is why what I write about in the book is so vital, and it will help you tremendously if you are tired and are willing to allow the Holy Spirit to overcome in your life. You have to feed the Holy Spirit on a day-to-day basis, and those big humongous trees, those habitual sins, will come tumbling down. The example you just gave is great, Israel, but how do I actually receive the Holy Spirit? Watch this video right here. It will show you exactly how to do so if you haven't already.